Dodgers Hot Stove, and a Breakthrough Series review. Missy Coombes is back, and Diamond Diehards is on. Missy Coombes is back. Joe Rizzo here, bringing you baseball along with the dog, Jeff Healy. We are streaming live on Facebook, so if you're catching us live, we appreciate that. And if you're watching or listening on demand, we appreciate that as well. Follow us everywhere at Diamond Diehards. That's on all social media platforms. Join our Facebook group, and that's usually where we live stream, at least for today. We're live streaming from there. We have live streamed from our other platforms in the past and might do so again in the future. But if you want to catch it live, that's the place to go. Facebook.com/groups/Diamond Diehards. Follow us on Twitter at Diamond Diehards. I'm usually running that account. And you can follow the dog at Jeff Healy 8. That's the number 8. You can follow our pal Missy Coombes at Missy Missy Coombes COOMBES, and she now ranks as the second timer on the show after our pal Mike Puma, who probably will soon become the first third timer or something like that. And we don't count Jerry Milani because he's more of like a co-host. So respect to Jerry. We have a lot to cover in this one, and we're going to try to cover it succinctly and in a fun way. The Dodgers Hot Stove is, if you've heard Missy before, and if you haven't had the background on her when she comes on, if you're watching, you could see her. We'll let her give her own background about herself and her cachet as a professional baseball player, but of our ilk in time. And she had a wonderful experience recently in Texas with the Breakthrough Series, where she got to see the best young female baseball talent on display and meet a couple of people who are near and dear to us, and we'll talk about that as well. As always, though, we kick it off by having the dog give us the veteran of the day. Dog.
All right, thanks, Riz, and welcome again, Missy. This is one that's close to my heart. The veteran of the day is going to be Sherry Ward. She was a U.S. Navy signalman. She wound up being one of the first women to go through an integrated male-female boot camp. So it was really contentious back in the early 90s. She also had the privilege to serve as one of the first women to serve on an aircraft carrier in the Persian Gulf, which again, another really big step in the mid-90s or so. Got to go and help represent the U.S. Around and visiting different local nations and stuff. She now serves as the president of our Guardian Life Veterans and Allies Employee Resource Group. So once again, our veteran of the day, Sherry Ward, a pioneering female U.S. Navy vet.
Gotta love it. Apropos, dog always on point with the veterans of the day. Missy, great to have you back.
Thanks for having me.
And for those unfamiliar with your background and your credentials, of the three of us, you're the one that got paid to play baseball professionally. And
days ago.
Yeah, but doesn't matter. Still did it.
Yep, I did it.
So why don't you give everybody the rundown of who you are and where you're from, and then we'll get on with the good fun stuff.
I'm Missy Coombes. I'm from Los Angeles, California. Grew up a Dodger fan. My mom actually was telling me a story this morning about my wiffle ball bat and my ball and how I got started with baseball and how I was dragging the bat behind me, barely walking, and went up to him with the ball. So that was kind of the beginning of the dada ball era of my life that has continued throughout my life and my passion and love for baseball. I was fortunate enough to play for the Colorado Silver Bullets in the 90s and obviously got paid professionally. I was a left-handed pitcher. I did get to start against the 1969 Mets in the old Shea Stadium. Was disappointed that I took the loss in that one, but that's a whole nother story. And I have my Red Sox banner here, got to start in Fenway a couple times. And I just love baseball, and it's been a part of my life since I could barely talk and walk.
It's a pretty succinct recap, the way to the way to put it. To me, the most important thing is the money, the Benjamins. Um, okay, and you have the Red Sox banner behind you there, um, making our pal Jeff Frye probably happy, and that's from courtesy of your youngest son, right?
Yes, my youngest son is a Red Sox fan. He's a football player, so baseball, he is no longer playing. Probably played longer than he wanted to because of mom. Go figure with kids and everything like that. And so he was a big David Ortiz, Big Poppy wore his number when he played baseball and is still a Red Sox fan, but more into football. So football is what he's destined to do.
And speaking of a little football, of course, Dog and I, our beloved New York Giants, are playing Monday Night Football as we speak. So that will keep the show nice and short, especially unless the game gets out of hand. Then we'll be going for like 2 hours. Um, and of course, I had to rep the Giants with my Giant shirt and my Bergen Catholic Crusaders, who will be playing arch rival Don Bosco at MetLife Stadium this weekend for the state championship. And many people, when they hear that matchup is happening, say, "Oh, Bergen Bosco," as it should be. I'm like, yeah, that's there we go. So there, we're covering football, we're covering baseball, we're covering both coasts, and we're covering you know the part about sports and even in the military here, the importance, especially today, of understanding that there's a place, not just for men in what have typically been male dominated areas like the military and baseball, right? And so Missy's a perfect example of that. Our veteran of the day is a wonderful example of that. We'll get to more on that later when we talk about the breakthrough series, but like the Dodgers, Missy, your Dodgers have a massive offseason here coming off the National League Championship Series defeat where they just got like one too many injuries and they found the Braves to be a little too much of a buzzsaw, that tough combination. Plus, it was like they had the heavyweight fight, what we would think of as like a 15 rounder, but this generation thinks of as a 12 rounder where they had to play the 107 win Giants. I mean, you play your arch rivals and you beat them in the last inning of the seventh game of an unbelievable series. And now we have the names ticked off here. If you're in charge, what are you doing with? And then we'll start with each one. Corey Seager, what are you doing with Corey Seager?
Well, obviously from a fan's perspective, I'm not the one spending, you were talking about the money, so I'm not the one in charge of the money, so my perspective is obviously a little different than the organization themselves and the money that people are demanding. But I know we have Trey Turner, and so I personally think that Seager will no longer be with the Dodgers. Obviously I'd love to have him, but I think we're going to lose him. I'm big on the next one on your list, Scherzer. I think Scherzer, keeping him with that young starting rotation that we have, the chemistry he brings, everything, all the aspects about him as a veteran, keeping him around, I think is a big thing. For me personally, I think he's the one you try to go out and keep.
Okay, what a shock. The pitcher wants to keep the pitcher. I didn't see that one coming.
Well, I would love to keep
Pretty good.
Seager too, but we also have Trey Turner, and he is a shortstop, and he didn't get to play shortstop, so it's odd man out. Somebody has to go.
Okay, so let's talk. So we'll talk a little bit about like first what you think the Dodgers should do. What we're putting you in charge of the money and the budget and everything, by the way,
Okay, no
Missy. So don't
problem.
worry about it.
I got this.
And then like once we tick off each name, we'll see if we can find a location that is alternate to the Dodgers, and we make a consensus on that. So, Dog. I will jump in on Seager, as I've said, I think from what, April of last year. I'm like, this guy belongs, long term with the Yankees. That was before they went out and traded Trey Turner from the Nationals to the Dodgers, which made it even easier for that potentially to happen. The Yankee detractors of that would say, well, you have, a stud, a super stud, can't miss shortstop that could be there as soon as this year, maybe next, and he's your long term guy. I'm like, listen, I'll pay Seager. I'll give him 7 years. I got no problem with that. I'll pay him the big bucks because he profiles perfectly as a guy who I'll let him play shortstop for 2 years, 3 years, 1 year, whatever it is. He perfectly moves to third. He profiles perfectly as a third baseman. His brother's a phenomenal third baseman. So he keeps the left-handed stick in there. He's a versatile player. He's a winning player. So I don't mind signing him to shortstop money. And if your young super stud shortstop comes in there and he's ready to go, then fine, he moves over to third. So I say Yankees all the way, as I have been for a while. Dog.
Yep, concur completely. We talked about several times in the show. He fits in perfectly in both the defense and also perfectly with the lineup as well. So I think it makes a ton of sense. There's gonna be other suitors for him, but I do think it makes the most sense for him in the Bronx.
Okay, Missy likes Scherzer staying with the Dodgers. It's going to be hard to see him go anywhere, right? Like his experience there. He looked not just happy, like overjoyed in that like Scherzer, crazy man kind of way. So I listen. If I was any team, I don't care how old he is. Like I would take him. I would sign him. I would sign him for 3 years at the right money. 2 years I'd give him more money. 3 years I'd say, look, I'll give you the third year. We'll give you a little less per year, but I'll give you that third year. He shows signs that um, he hits a couple of bumps in the road, during the season, but that when it comes time for the end of the year, he's ready to go. They probably shouldn't have pitched him in relief that game. It seemed to, in retrospect, um, just mess up the calibration a little bit going forward when they had to use him or decided to use him out of the pen for a stressful inning and in between starts. But he looks like he found the spot. So I'm in with Missy, and I say, you know, 2 3 years, whatever they want to give him, they'll give it to him and he'll get it. Dog.
Yeah, I agree with you again on that one, Riz. I think I agree with both you and Missy on that. That I think it makes a ton of sense with that. Money clearly should not be an object for the Dodgers. So Guggenheim Partners is doing okay. So they get plenty of dough to throw there. So yeah, I think that one's again a no brainer. I think Missy, I think you really hit the nail on the head too with like having the veteran leadership of the top of the rotation with the young guys kind of coming up and following along. That's a nice balance, I think, and I think that makes a ton of sense.
Okay. This one's gonna be tight. I'm done. I like when we were considering this, like Missy, we started talking what 3 4 weeks ago, I guess, about at what point we were gonna get you on for the Dodgers and the Breakthrough Series, and I've been waiting for this moment because I want to hear as a a dyed in the Dodger blue wool, whatever it is, uh, Clayton Kershaw.
Oh, that's a tough one.
Mm.
Well, it's a tough one because obviously the Dodgers keep Clayton Kershaw. Now, with that said, he hasn't given us a full season in a while. Obviously, I don't need to tote him. I mean, we know what he's done for the Dodgers and the organization. He's, the face of the organization for a long time. I think it all depends on the money, how much he really is asking. Couple factors in there is the money. If the Dodgers are willing to give it to him. And also too, I know he's from Texas. Actually, during the Breakthrough Series, he just happened to be doing a clinic right across the street and was in town. So a lot of it's going to depend on what him and his family decides and the talks with the Dodgers. So I think it's a big question mark there for me.
But what do you? Okay, so in your heart, slash, like, so when your heart meets your head, do you want him back, or are you ready to say, okay, look, this is as good a time as any to part ways amicably, and it's been, an amazing run, or do you say, look, I'll take him in whatever form he has to give because he means as much to the front of the uniform as his name on the back of the uniform?
Well, like I said, a lot of it would depend on what his role would be because where does he fit in the rotation? If we can get Scherzer, we have Urias, we have Bueller. I don't know how far out May is from coming back. There's a lot of pieces there, and how many starting pitchers are we going to go into camp with? So, and is he going to pitch for a full season? I mean, we still don't know his status of what ended his season this past season. So to me, there's so many factors in there that have to be put in there. And obviously Dodger fans are going to go after me on this one because, I'm more of a realist. Leave it to me, the true baseball fan. But at the same time, I understand the business side of it a little bit and the experience of it also. I'd love to have him. Of course, we want Kershaw. But what's the price tag and what's the expectation with it? I don't know.
Okay, so give us your proposal then. What would you sign him to? What would you ask him to do on the as part of the role? You could, why don't you delve into that a little bit if you were in charge?
Well, I still don't know what his injury was. That's kind of a tough one for me because I know he went down at the end and obviously was not, so is he even going to come back? I mean, when I say he's even going to come back, I'm not saying he's done, but there's some question marks there. So, and I'm looking at the list of the next guy too, because you can only pay so many guys, and what do we have? And hold on, let me look at our depth chart.
Oh, here we go.
So I got to pull up the depth chart here that you shared here.
We are prepared though. This Dawg was right. We are.
Yeah, we don't.
We are so prepared for this show.
We don't have a lot of depth though right now. I mean,
not signed depth, right?
Yeah.
120 innings last year, so whip just over 1. So Bucks, I think 19 was.
So what do you guys think?
31 mil, and he's gonna be 34.
What do you guys think? You're not Dodger. I mean, you don't have the same heart that
I think top end franchises don't let their signature players leave, and I think if the Dodgers, I think you keep him. You sign him for 3 years and let him finish out his career as a Dodger.
How much money are you giving him?
He probably.
At some point, it does matter, Dawg, right?
It does.
Because you're paying a lot of contracts, and you're at the threshold, and it's going to cost you. Each of those dollars is going to cost you twice as much at some point, right?
I will go. I will go on this one. Let's go with the 3-year deal, and with significant innings incentives, so that way you're sort of balanced out a little bit, right? So he can give you 120 top of the line innings. If he's over whatever his injury was and he's back to being a 150 to 180 innings guy, then he's worth 25 to 30, right? So maybe you say it's 25 to 30 if you do 180. If you're giving me 100, we got to cut that back somewhat. We're like maybe he triggered innings, maybe the inning spring or something like that, right? Where if you throw 150 plus, then you get the third year or something like that. So I will go with incentive laden, 3 years, 30 million. So 390, right?
390. Okay, so I think you're high on the money. I don't think you have to probably go that high coming off the deal that he was at, because you don't have the expectation that he's going to be like a 200 inning pitcher anymore, right? So yeah. I think we could go lower on the money, and for the years, I think you could go 2 years, 3 years. Like me, so Missy, it's funny, like you say, well, we're not sort of invested because we're not Dodger fans or whatever, but like for baseball, like I feel like I want to see Clayton Kershaw on the Dodgers. Like I feel like I want that. Like if the Dodgers go somewhere, like I want to see him pitching against me. And honestly, as a Yankee fan, like I would take him in a second on my team. So
I want him on the Dodgers. I don't want to. I think I came off incorrectly when I said that. I want him on the Dodgers as a Dodger fan, and take away the money and being the front office. He's a Dodger. He gets to make that decision. Like I said, I know there's other factors in there because he's from Texas, family, things that obviously are between him and the organization that I'm not privy to those conversations, if that makes sense of what I'm trying to say here.
Yeah. Good points. And if he's going to jump, now is probably the year, right? Like he could, I don't know, go to the Rangers or something like that, right?
Right.
And and wants to do it and wants to have a 3 or 4 year run to finish up on it. Like you don't want Clayton Kershaw to finish like one like scrubby year somebody else, right? At least I don't think your fans want that. I kind of doubt that he would want that. So I do sort of agree. Like if he's going to go now, sort of a natural time, and you can have a somewhat meaningful second chapter. And again, if the family situation, lines up more in Texas, let's say, than California, that does make some sense to kind of finish off your career that way.
Doug, I feel like he fits into our thing that we talked about 2 years ago, where I could deploy those. I'd be glad to deploy those 120 innings, 2 and 3 innings at a time, every few games with him, because then he's in my locker room, he's in my bullpen. If something comes up and I need him to start, I know he could do that. And maybe I increase his effectiveness and take some of the taxing off of his arm and the other parts of his body. And it's maybe he's just as effective in those 120 innings, or even more effective. And within the scope of the way games are being managed today, um, you still need to get through the regular season, but if he's playing that role during the regular season, he's already going to be suited to it in the playoffs. So I'm all for anywhere, anybody. Watch, he'll probably sign with the Rays.
I'm not sure I'm dropping 30 million on the middle relief.
No, I don't know. I'm not. Look, I'll go.
There's a little pride in there too, I think too.
I'll
Right?
give him the extra
That's
year and knock it down to 18 million or whatever a year,
like
like for that.
get him down to loop numbers.
No, he's 17 million over 2 years. So I mean that's a big.
Just-
That's double.
just
Then we're keeping him.
Just
There we
teasing.
go.
Yeah. Okay.
We're keeping him in LA.
We solved it.
I do think though. I do think that there's going to be a sneaky market for him. That he's a guy that a lot of teams are really going to kick the tires on, because they're going to be like, how often is Clayton Kershaw going to become available? And I like they look at guys like Scherzer, Verlander, whatever. Like those guys had dips or weren't as good at points in their career, even in their early 30s, as they were at the end of the later part of their 30s. So he's a guy who like knows how to pitch. He knows every situation, and he's been a winner despite what was his reputation before he got that well-deserved ring. Which leads us to Kenley Janssen, right? Another guy that's dyed in the wool Dodger blue, but often maligned, right? Like people in the organization want him out, people out of the organization want him out, like, and yet he just keeps showing up and doing the job with pretty good effectiveness. I mean, at times he's been booted from that closer role, but he always seems to make it back there, and he had a pretty great year this year. But the closers around the majors, there's just not many good ones anymore. If you ask me right now, who was the best closer in the majors last year, I don't even know if I had an answer for Mark Melanson. Like I don't even know who it was. So they all were so flawed, and he's was last year and has been as good as anybody in that role for an extended period of time. But I feel like he's the one guy in this mix who, him and Seager, like I could really see them going, because there's just a specific market and maybe specific teams that are going to be really, really interested in Kenley Janssen.
I, the thing that's hard with Kenley here, and I see all the games in our feed here in LA, and Dodger fans aren't very kind to him. As you know, he gets booed a lot. And so he's been kind of that guy that there's been, they put him in and there's Dodger fans going, oh man. So it'll be interesting. I know Roberts really loves him. So I don't know if he has any say in, what the front office is going to do and offer and that kind of stuff, but he's been his guy. So it'll be interesting to see, what happens with him. I don't know enough about what the talks are with him.
Yeah, I don't know, dog. I feel like nobody's talking about this, but I just have this weird sense, and I haven't seen it written anywhere or talked about anywhere. Missy, turn over your shoulder. I have a sense he's going to end up with the Red Sox.
Well, it
I
seems
I
like
don't
the
know
Red Sox
why.
got a lot of good Dodgers this year.
Mm.
Former Dodgers, I should say, of course. We
He's
had
got the
Kiki.
Yeah. I just get this sense he's going to end up there, and I don't know what the contract will be. I don't know if he's going to be one of these earlier dominoes to fall before this labor thing really kicks in, and a week or two from now. It's November 22nd that we're doing this, and of course there's that quote unquote magical December 1st deadline for when the collective bargaining agreement expires, and we've seen much more early activity than probably most people anticipated here leading into it. I don't know if he's going to be one of those early dominoes to fall before it. He might end up, I could see him being one of these guys that it's March, it's pushing toward the beginning of the season, and he's still kind of out there, and somebody's gonna be like, let's just get him, like let's just sign him and see what we get out of him. Dog.
Yeah, I mean, I think of all the ones that are kind of running down, I do actually have a feeling. I think Jansen might be one of the ones that doesn't wind up back on the Dodgers. And not a great reason on it other than um, I think it's going to demand big bucks to kind of do it. It's always tough with it. It's tough, right? You generally want to reward uh, guys who go out and do a great job and stuff like that, but it almost always seems to bite you in the behind on relievers. Right? Like once they're hot, like you're supposed to say thanks and just let them go, and it always maybe it's just the medic in me, but it always seems like they're like, all right, you know what, this is it. Now we got it. We're all set for whatever time, and it comes back to bite you on that. And I do think, especially with the young pitching that the Dodgers have kind of coming up through their system and whatnot, I think they can actually kind of replace that a little bit more internally, versus what they're going to spend on that. So I'd rather spend on keeping the big bucks up at the top of the rotation and kind of solidifying that in. And I think I kind of like you start to build your bullpen around on those situational sorts of guys, and not necessarily paying for that one magical guy at the top.
Well, the bullpens matter a lot more now, so I wonder if that's going to increase his value to some of these analytics teams who are like, we could get Kenley Janssen here, and if we have a different closer, if he's willing to accept, their offer, they could deploy him in different situations. They could, bring him in for make him, a two-inning pitcher at times, and instead of keeping the traditional closer thing. A lot of teams are moving a little bit away from that based on the analytics stuff. And analytics wise, I think he's a guy that grades out pretty well. Like I think he grades out as well or better in analytics as he does in the eye test. So uh, I guess we all see him kind of being a big candidate to move on from the Dodgers. And I'm just going to go out there and say Red Sox. I don't even know why, but ha- literally half the time I do this, I end up being right. So not to pat myself on the back, but I'll let Dog do it for me.
Great job there, Riz.
Yeah. A guy that has been rumored, a lot of people saying this guy's going to end up with the Red Sox, but I don't think so, is Chris Taylor. And since we keep throwing it to Missy first, why don't we just reverse it a little bit and put this one in Dog's house first? Chris Taylor, Dog.
Chris Taylor. Um, I think he goes. I think again another one. I think they are going to want to spend a ton of dough up at the top of that rotation. So again, if I'm looking at keeping Scherzer and Kershaw, again, I think that's another one where sometimes you just have to you have to kind of to bite the bullet at some time. And I think he's going to be at yeah. That's it. I'll just let it go. I don't think they're gonna want to bringing him back there.
Missy, is he the beloved scrappy guy to all Dodger fans, or is there a
I
little hit
think
or miss on
I
him out there?
I think he's loved with Dodger fans. definitely. Um, but he might, well, I know he didn't take the qualifying offer that they made, so I know that he's wanting money. And so money's going to determine, I think, whether he's with us or not. And I don't know enough details about that. But yeah, I'd love to have him. I think that there's a place for him. We definitely, the thing is there's a place for him, but then I don't know what the Dodgers, we always seem to have like this excess of outfielders and infielders. But they seem to find places to play. And with our injuries, we had Turner go down, obviously, in the playoffs. So having that depth has always been really nice. I just don't know how long you can keep that depth with certain players.
Yeah, I think he's a go. I think he's going to get that money offer from some
Something.
team that's kind of on the cusp, and they feel like, okay, this is a guy who has a good playoff track record. But I think it's going to be a limited number of teams because, like, we saw him cruise into the playoffs on what, like an 8 for 72 slide, and then all of a sudden it woke up. And I think especially as he gets up in age, he's a player that relies a lot on speed. He relies a lot on hustle. And if those things start to diminish a little bit, we're going to see more 8 for 72s, and we're going to see a little less, getting to a ball that he would have gotten to, and that starts to diminish his value more quickly. Now we have seen players like Brett Gardner, for example, who's reliant on similar things, be able to, be a staple for the Yankees. He's always like a fourth or fifth outfielder. He always ends up playing like three-quarters of the games because other guys get hurt, and he's still in there, even though his numbers have diminished. But he brings other things to the table that also Taylor does as well. I think for the Dodgers, though, you have sort of younger, better versions of him. Gavin Lux being the main guy, right? Like, so even in a world where you lose Corey Seager, um, Lux kind of steps in to the Trey Turner role when Trey Turner moves over to shortstop, or Lux just moves right to shortstop, right? And if you do have that dearth of players in the middle infield, Lux has played some outfield already, right? Even though he hadn't played it much, like they throw him out in center. Of course, he's like running headfirst into the wall, which didn't help him very much. But he's a pretty good athlete. He's probably going to get it. And if you look at his profile, he looks like he's going to hit. And tomorrow, or well, we won't say tomorrow, yesterday, or whatever, but November 23rd is his 24th birthday, so he's still young and he's got a lot ahead of him. So um, I'm on the Chris Taylor will be moving on train. And let's see, I don't know, Doug. I always like to throw out there like where he's going to end up, but there's just like he's a guy I could see ending up in Texas. Like I wouldn't be floored if
Uh,
like Taylor and Kershaw ended up in Texas together just to see. Like I think the Rangers are kind of looking at guys with a little bit of versatility like that and bringing some winning pedigree into their locker room. So I'll go with Texas. It's kind of like an, a convenient one to go with. I'm riding a little bit of the rumor train on there, which I hate to do, but like I think why not? It sounds good. Last name we put on the list here is Albert Pujols, and it's not so much like is he going to retire or not retire. It's not so much do you want him back as a Dodger, Missy. It's more of like as a Dodger fan who watched him with the Angels over the previous 10 years, and then they send him down the river, and all of a sudden like you're watching him play with the Dodgers, and like he's actually performing pretty well in the role in which he's asked to perform, which is like get in there against lefties and play first base, and in the American League parks maybe he could DH and come up and pinch hit here. He actually would. I mean, he didn't do much in the playoff situation, but like, what did that feel like having Albert Pujols as a Dodger for half a
Well,
year?
I loved it. I loved it. And, I think I'd like to have him back. The one thing he did bring early in the playoffs, it didn't happen late in the playoffs, but there was one game in particular I was watching and he got the start at first base and he was 3 for 3. And then we go into the whole analytics and, Jeff Frye and the put the ball in play, but he was 3 for 3 and he got on base 3 times. And I'm big about that. I don't know if the Dodgers are big about that kind of stuff, the small ball, getting on base, moving a runner over and scoring them and stuff. But I think he's a big asset to the team. I think with the younger players, they really gravitated to him. And he's kind of like the guy that it depends on him and what his desires are as well, as a player. But if he can come off our bench and kind of have the role he had at the end, with us this past year, keep him. I'm all for it.
Dawg?
Yeah, why not? I'll say it's basically a free option on a great player, great person to have around, and a still pretty darn effective bat off the bench. So I think that works.
I don't know. I'm thinking you move on because he's just gonna you're gonna eventually log jam that position, and you have Justin Turner over at third, and he's definitely a guy you want to keep around. You might have the universal DH here, and you might need a little flexibility where you could ink a guy that's going to end up playing some third base for you. And first base is sort of that one position that um, if you have a little bit of flexibility there, it doesn't hurt. Um, Max Muncy is lefties, righties, like he's a mainstay at this point too. And if you want a little bit of depth there, but like I would keep that other like I don't he doesn't need a platoon. I would just keep it open there and feel like if as we move along, Turner could be your guy to fill that role, and then you get another guy. If you keep around Taylor, that sort of solves that problem, right? Where you have all your infield depth around the horn. Taylor could fill in at third. You could play Turner at first. You could do a lot of different things. So I say you move on from Pujols, and he might even make that decision for us. Although for some reason he just doesn't seem like a guy who's gonna give up until like really no one wants to employ him anymore, which is probably the way I would do it because man, that's good money just to be on that major league roster. There's no reason to get to like just keep taking it, man. Like whatever. Don't worry about your legacy's set, dude. Your legacy was set with the Cardinals, And people on the East, Missy, what's interesting is, your West Coast, like Pujols, his Angels career, on people like Dawg and I, it's basically lost. It's almost like he was playing in a black hole. But for people on the West Coast, I don't think it is. You're like, oh, the Angel, like you thought of the Angels and you thought of Pujols, and then you thought of Pujols and Trout, right? Pujols and Trout, Pujols and Trout, Pujols and Trout. But for us, it's like we still think of Pujols as a Cardinal probably more than an Angel, but he probably in the end, has had more Angels at bats. But that's why I think it's interesting to see. I thought it would have been one of those funny things. Like if the Dodgers won the World Series, I would have looked back in 5 years and been like, Albert Pujols was on the Dodgers championship team? How do I not remember that? And here's a good one. You're a Dodger fan. Here's a good one, Missy. I stumbled upon this today for whatever reason when I was looking at Baseball Reference. I had no as a Yankee fan, I had no memory at all of the 3 years that Hiroki Kuroda pitched for the Yankees.
Oh, I do.
I was like, wait a minute. He was
the Dodgers. That's why.
I know he was a great Dodger, but the years he pitched for the Yankees from 2012 to 2014, he had over 30 starts every year, I think. And I was like, I don't even remember Hiroki Kuroda as a Yankee. Like, how do I not remember that? Like, that's bad. So, Dawg, you could laugh at me for that.
That's right. I think even I knew that one.
No, I mean, I knew it because I was watching it as it happened, and I liked Hiroki Kuroda, but I was like, how do I just not associate him at all as a Yankee? And he pitched almost as long and almost as much for the Yankees as he did for the Dodgers. Now he came into the majors later, and in those last 3 years, those were his 37, 38, and 39-year-old seasons. But he was still good. He was really good, actually. So that's interesting. It's just one of those things where like you associate one guy with a team, and then you kind of forget that Jerry Rice was a Raider and he was in the Super Bowl, right? Like with them. Um, you made a big signing, the Dodgers. Andrew Heaney. You must have been excited about that. There, exactly. I think that sums up that segment. He was like, as soon as free agency started, it's like Dodgers signed Andrew Heaney, 1 year, $8 million, and all the Yankee fans are like, "What? What? What? Why? Why?" He's not even like
A Yankee? I don't even know who he was.
he was.
Is
He was an angel. Yeah, he came up with the Florida Marlins before they were Miami. I think he was like a number 1 pick. Lefties, lanky.
okay.
You know, he's kind of your kind of guy. A little speed stuff.
Well, now I'll get to see him.
Vision.
That's one of my things about baseball is you only get to see the market that you're in. So I see the Dodgers.
He kind of sucked.
Yeah.
I'll save you the time on it. He kind of sucked.
We're thinking maybe the Dodgers see something that nobody else saw.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I mean, he could strike people out, but his other stuff doesn't look so good. Anyway, so I think we could put a bow on. I think we covered the Dodger hot stove pretty solidly and succinctly there. So why don't we move on and talk about your fun trip recently to Texas for the MLB BreakThrough Series. You, as a baseball player of a female persuasion, well ahead of your time. Even honestly, Missy, even the girls that are playing now are ahead of their time. So the fact that you did it, 25, 26 years ago at a professional level, not to mention what you did 10 years before that, and coming up and playing pony league ball and just being a woman on an island. That had to be really something spectacular for you to see these super talented, hardworking, dedicated girls get a chance to play in major league type settings with big league level instructors. Although for some reason they let you watch, but they didn't let you instruct. Or, I'm not saying anything. I'm just putting that out. You didn't say it, I did, so you're good. I was a little dubious about that. I'm like, that's kind of the one that you kind of want her out there. Anyway, but tell us a little bit about your experience going down there, when you even heard about it, and the fact that you were able to take time out of your schedule, your professional life, and your parenting responsibilities, right? Which are the first thing in all of our lives. Those of us who are lucky to have kids, tell us a little bit about how this all came about for you.
It came about. First of all, it was the first time that I had seen young ladies play baseball since I played, because I have not seen in person women play baseball or girls play baseball since then. And I know that we have a USA team that has been around, but I didn't even know it existed for the first many years that it did exist. And now I'm aware of it, but I haven't got to see women play baseball in person. And as you know, our friend Lilli, I found out she was going to be there through her mom and from Elizabeth Ben from Major League Baseball. And I decided that I wanted to go see these young ladies play and see women play baseball again, because it's been a couple years. So that's kind of where the reasoning came from. And there's some other events as well that are out there. And I just knew that Major League Baseball was behind this, and it was something that I wanted to go and be a part of and watch. And so that's what kind of came from. Somewhere in a tweet of Lilli's, Elizabeth had said, we're going to be in Texas. So I corresponded with her a little bit, and she said I was welcome to come see, the activities that were going on the field and at the facility. So I took advantage of that and went down there and had a great time. Was very impressed.
You know what I love? That look, we're 50 somethings, all of us here, and you know, despite what you see, I know people are in disbelief. Um, but you know what? You know what's really impressive to me is that you go there selflessly, and you're not trying to live vicariously through these girls. And you know, honestly, even if you were, I wouldn't blame you because it's so cool. It's amazing. Like a guy can't really have that experience. Like we can't. There's almost like dog. Is there even anything that we could relate that to? Like, it just doesn't. It just doesn't apply. So for you to be in
No.
that category of baseball pioneer, and we're still in this like next phase of pioneering, and you get to see, meet, and understand and watch what these next level of pioneers, uh, you know, in terms of girls playing baseball are doing. I mean, that's like a really special moment in time. Like, I was, I mean, I wasn't crying looking at the video or anything like that. Dog might have been, um, but not me. I was just happened to be peeling onions that day because we eat a lot of onions in the house. So, but yeah, you're at like a really special moment in time, and it's great to see, and it's stupendous that you're willing to share all of this with us.
Yeah, I mean, I just was really, really honored to be there. And, you talk about coaching and being pioneers, one of the things that I had the opportunity to see firsthand is women coaches. I was beyond impressed with Coach Veronica Alvarez with the A's. She's with the A's organization, and she's USA baseball manager or the head coach. And she's a catcher, or was a catcher, and just the information that she was providing for every single one of those young ladies out there, the coaching and just the catching. Being a pitcher, I was really impressed because she was showing all the catchers pretty much how to receive every single pitch in every single location, so a pitcher will get the strike, or will get, it'll look like it's a strike every time. So the instruction that she was providing was amazing. And then, obviously the other coaches that were there as well. I got to meet Bianca Smith, who's with the Red Sox organization. She's phenomenal as well. She was out there on the bases, and she's all about strategy. And in talking with her, her dream is eventually to be a manager someday and be in charge of, the X's and O's. And just talking baseball with her, phenomenal baseball mind as well. So I felt like it was my opportunity to grow and learn and see other women that I've never got the opportunity to meet, that are passing on the game of baseball, and they understand the game, they know the game. And yeah, they're females, but they know the game just as much as any guy. And that to me was special.
Doug, you want to jump in there?
Yeah, I was gonna say how what was sort of their backgrounds, and how were they able to make the leap up to Major League Baseball coaching? It's obviously, it's tough being a pioneer like that. I mean, kind of like you were back in the day. I don't know if you got to talk as much of them, of sort of like what sort of steps they sort of took. Like did they start at a lower level in MLB and kind of work their way up, or did they kind of go through the college ranks and then do the leap? Or
Well, I want to clarify. When I talk about the organizations, that's the organizations they work within. Bianca Smith's with the rookie ball at rookie ball level. So
Mhm.
that's where she's currently working with
Okay.
those players and stuff. So that was fun because my oldest son is a baseball player. And so some of the guys drafted, and some of my son's friends are with the Red Sox organization. So I was able to throw out a
Oh,
couple
cool.
names, and she knew those young men. And, we were able to share some common stories or about them. So that was fun. As far as Veronica Alvarez, I know she's with the A's. I'm not exactly sure what her role is, but like I said, she is the coach of the women's US baseball team.
Mhm.
I recently saw that or looked that up. So I'm not quite sure much more about that. And then going to Bianca Smith, she played baseball and coached softball and baseball. So she's one of those ones that does no baseball, does no softball. Coach Alvarez, I'm not as sure. I think she did play in college softball, but I'd have to look it up.
Gotcha.
The other one that I talked to was Kelsey Whitmore, who is an interesting one for me. And I was excited to go up and say hi to her because she played softball at Cal State Fullerton. And I had first met her at an alumni function when she was either a freshman or sophomore. And so I do have a signed softball that's signed by Kelsey because she's a pitcher and a baseball player. And she just played college softball for 4 years just for the experience. But it was nice to see her in action as well.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, just played it for the experience, you know. Just being a D1 softball player at a powerhouse, you know what? I wasn't doing anything else.
I guess
Math
it
was a little boring. I wanted to, you know, jazz it up a little bit.
I guess I thought it was pretty cool. I was just clicking around on, I was just looking up, Breakthrough Series on MLB and stuff. And so you go to MLB.com and click over Breakthrough Series and whatever. And it's pretty cool. Like just sitting there scrolling down, all of a sudden it's like, Olivia Pichardo, Elise Berger, and Lillian Martineau are furthering their skills this week. I mean, that's pretty awesome, right? I mean, that's right up the MLB site, right sitting there. That's I'd be pretty stoked if I was a college player and got to see that. So never mind the young ladies there. So that's
it was quite
pretty
impressive.
awesome.
And I got to meet Olivia and Lilli, who I had not met. The only disappointment I have to say is that Lilli had asked me to play catch and I wasn't allowed, or, I wasn't able to play catch with her. So I did promise her that at a later time, I will make my way back out east and we'll have a catch.
There we go.
We'll be there.
So yeah, we can all meet in the middle up there somewhere.
Yeah.
Well, to me, I'm coming far, so I'm sure that it'll all work. I mean, the middle works for me too. I'm gonna go that way. I'll come to the east and we'll figure it out, right?
Casa Riz is almost done.
Yeah, there you go.
Nice.
Fence. They put the fence around today.
Gotta put a mound out there.
It was just. Well, we have a lot of. There's a lot of fields around by us, so we can figure that one out. But yeah, so what was great, and we were really honored to do this was. I believe that the first time you and Lillian Martineau ever got to actually speak, other than just messaging back and forth, was on our show, right? When we rigged it behind the scenes. We talked to Chad and Katie, her parents, are great people, and we were getting Lillian on the show, and then we talked behind the scenes, and we zinged her right in the middle. You came on, and. So actually, wait. So this is really your third appearance. I screwed up. You're a two-time full guest, but this is your third appearance. So
there we go.
Yeah,
first three-timer.
That's a bad job by me right there. That's a terrible job. But what was it like when you finally got to meet in person?
It was special. It's nice to get to see somebody that you became kind of friends with through social media. I'm a big fan of hers, and she has a bright future in baseball. Whatever she's destined to do, she's gonna do it. And it was just nice to see her and got to meet her. I would have liked to talk to her more. The event was really professionally done, and so the players kind of were, parents didn't. I was with the parents more or less, and they didn't get a lot of interaction, so I didn't really get to talk to her as much as I would have loved to sit down and have more conversation with her. But there's a future for that. But it was special to meet her and to get a picture with her, and just I'm lost for words, and I'm always the one talking with so many words, and I'm lost for words a little bit at the moment thinking about it, because it just really meant a lot to me, and I think it meant a lot to her as well.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and then you also got to meet Jeff Frye, who we had him on, and he's gone back and forth with us a lot, and he's go follow him on Twitter at I always mess it up.
Oh three.
The letter O, the number three, J Frye, Frye. And She Gone Nation. Shout out to She Gone. She Gone.
Gone.
Did he give you a She Gone in person? Like when you just were getting out of like when
Shirt.
you
He was very kind. He gave me a shirt. I'm gonna wear it probably this weekend. I had my shirt also as well. It was great to meet him in person, and he's doing some great stuff as well. He just did he has that little rivalry or the thing going on with the hitting techniques, but yeah.
Yeah, well, listen, I mean, it's he really believes in it. I mean, it's not some kind of act, right? Like
Oh, no. He did it.
he,
He knows.
yeah,
I mean, we talk about it, and going back to the Dodgers, if you can't execute, analytics, analytics. But there is a piece of the game that you cannot analyze. You have to be there. You have to live it. In the process of a game, there's like something that's going on and there's a feel. And people that played the game before analytics were the way that they are today, because people have always used analytical concepts for the life of the game. It just hasn't been, put into a computer per se and spit out to the extent that it is now. But there's a feel of knowing what's going to be. I mean, Maddox was one that used to be able to know what was going to happen with a pitch when it was, if he was doing an interview. I heard this interview where he told the reporter, watch out, here comes a foul ball. So the analytics part of the game has always been there. It's just that the older players didn't use it the same way that they do today.
well, the part for me that makes it difficult, and Dawg could speak to this because he's got like 20 kids, but one of them he's actually got six, but one of them is in that realm, in the learning years, and he's pretty accomplished. He's on good teams, and he shows a lot of promise. And these kids have to like look to the future and say, well, if I want to get to the next level, I have to have an exit velo of 75 or more consistently when I'm 13. And then when I'm 14, it's got to be 80. And when I'm 15, it's got to be 85. Like they're worried about that stuff. Like, could you imagine trying to hit a ball and worrying about like, okay, I have to stand at a tee or in a simulated situation and hit the ball this hard this amount of times when like I wouldn't use that swing in a game except in a game that I'm up like 12 nothing or down 12 nothing. Like I mean, it doesn't make sense. Like you're teaching them these skills for one because you don't want them to get to these showcases or whatever and they can't hit the ball that hard and so they don't get looked at. Like and Lillian Martineau is going through the same thing where she's forced to work on that stuff because if she doesn't have those numbers as part of her cachet, a lot of people are simply not even going to entertain looking at her. And what they're missing is you're missing baseball players. Like a baseball player could be wildly successful without concentrating on those things and just concentrating on situational hitting. And when do I unleash that big swing? Yeah, are you going to unleash that big swing sometimes? Of course you should, right? But it's not always the right time to do it. And what are you working on all the other times? So the part that gets me is, when I see kids like Dog's son and my guys don't play baseball anymore, but my daughter plays softball and she's not as a high level softball player. She's not really concentrating on those things. But when we do go over stuff, we go over much more of just be a softball player, just be an athlete, and don't worry about all this other stuff. Like that's just, there are some girls that are dedicated to it. They can really hit, they really field, and you don't have to be that kid. Just go out there and play, and we'll tweak the instruction here and there. Like it really, it's I've started to see it, and we have some friends that have kids. They're playing in high school. I go to the high school games and I watch it, and I feel terrible that these kids just they're forced to concentrate on this stuff. It's really trickled down, and I admire Jeff for what he's trying to do. Jeff Frye. I admire the dog, Jeff Healy. Of course, everybody knows that, but I really admire Jeff Frye because you know what? It takes balls to do what he does, and not everybody could do that. So I'm glad that he takes a stand there and he's a vocal mouthpiece about it. And I like the way that you reveal a little behind the scenes of that he's a super generous guy. He's very friendly and accommodating. He was a major league player for 9 years, and he's the one that will go out of his way for you, like like you're special, right? And I'm glad that your interaction with him went well, and it was as I would have expected and hoped.
And that was the other piece to go back to the breakthrough series. What was refreshing is I do have a son that plays baseball, and you go to all those type of showcases and things like that, and the radar guns right there. You've got the exit velo, the what's your radar from right field throwing to third, home, and all that. And when they did the assessment at the beginning of the breakthrough series, there's no radar guns, there's no stopwatches, but it's old school in the sense you can tell by looking. You have the eyeball of being able to look and go, that's a player. That person has a strong arm, is very accurate, and it's like an old school assessment that way. And Jeff and I have exchanged tweets, and in talking, his story is an important story. He went to community college, and we talk about young kids, and you have to learn the basic fundamentals of the game. And that's what I saw in going to this event is you saw basic fundamentals of the game being taught. So players are learning to execute and do things properly. And, it was refreshing. It was refreshing. And, I have a son, my oldest son, I think hit 90 at 14 or 15. So, you know, I've gone through it with him as a mom, and he has his own. I don't talk that much about him because baseball, that's his dream and his career. It's not mine. And I'm very proud of him because, it isn't an easy game. It goes sideways on most players somewhere along the line to get to the highest levels. Not everybody does. Very few people get drafted. Very few people make it to D1. So that's where I'm advocating for the young ladies that I was watch play, because one of the things you hear all the time is, well, they can't make it because they can't. Okay, well, so do you tell, 80% of the young athletes in all sports, well, guess what? You're never going to make it past high school. I mean, that's kind of a ridiculous point, don't you think? I mean, how many guys make it? To be a great player and to make it to that next level, it's very rare. And there's more people that don't make it than that will make it. And so the whole, oh, you don't have a chance. I don't buy that argument, because if you're good enough, you deserve a chance. That's the way I look at it. If you have the skills and you're good enough, you should get a chance.
Yeah, I thought it's interesting. I think kind of the way Jeff uh, goes through it, and everyone else kind of breaking through it. Like to me, like you're saying, like analytics has always been part of the game, right? I mean, the smart players always used to write stuff down, right? I mean, the Rusty Staubs and Eddie Murray's, those guys, they were always writing that stuff down, always to try and get an edge on their next at bat. And I think where I think it's kind of gone awry is you used to use analytics to ensure that the player were able to go out and deliver the best outcome. And now it's like using analytics, and the analytics is the outcome. Like the exit velo is the outcome. No, the exit velo was if you gave the heat sheet or whatever to you know Keith Hernandez or something like that back in the day, right? and say, hey, look, key in on this, and then he's going to take care of it. Like, he's going to use that. That's a tool within his toolkit to go out and execute. It wasn't just, Keith, if you don't have this exit velo and this launch angle, then it's just not going to work. That's where I think it just gone awry. And analytics is now starting to be used to warp players, I guess, for lack of any better term, rather than empower a player. And I think eventually that cycle is going to swing back, because it's going to be inevitable, right? Pitchers are adjusting, so the batter's going to have to back to adjust, and guess what? Eventually, we're going back to just being good ball players and find a way and hitting the ball where they ain't and all that good stuff. It's just a question of how long it sort of takes. It's just my view. So
Yeah, I like the idea of understanding that these things would be byproducts of good fundamentals rather than
yeah,
the fundamental and then the other stuff being the byproduct. Like it doesn't, they they have it in reverse. Like it does. I mean, the thing, Missy, that's interesting. You're talking about like the radar gun from right field to third base, things like that. Look, we've all seen athletes come in from other sports, and you could see an athlete when they're out there, and they could come in and do stuff that the kid who's playing baseball all the time, like this kid's like, oh, I'm not a baseball player, and then they could pick up the ball and throw it like twice as far, twice as fast as the other one. But you know what? I'll take the baseball player kid because I'm going to win the game with him, like or her, right? It We see that, and they're stressing too much of the other stuff and not enough of the just go in and be a baseball player. And I think the kids don't realize it because they don't know what they're missing. They have no way of understanding anything else because they haven't been through it. But in a large way, you're robbing that late bloomer, the mediocre kid. You're robbing them from a chance to even ever get to that level because you have to play on a travel team, you have to do this and that. And some of these kids just don't bloom until later. They don't get their strength. They might be 15, 16 before any of that strength starts to build in. And all of a sudden, balls that were whizzing by them, now they can catch up. And they find out, oh, when I can catch up to the ball, you know what? I could actually hit it. And, oh, I'm a little faster now. That fly ball that I never even thought I could see, I could actually, not only can I catch that, I catch it pretty easily. And that throw that I used to make that bounced 7 times before it got to second base, like I could actually forget second, like I could throw it to third now. And you're missing that because those kids are never getting a chance. There's no rec program. There's no, like even the equivalent of pony league. Like you had kids probably playing in your pony league that were just recreational type baseball players that did that because they needed something to do for the summer, right?
Yeah, there were, they were probably in Pinto, but yeah. I was in Pony, but yeah, I mean, but I actually, some of the guys I played with, they actually were pretty good. I had some guys that have gone on to play professionally. So, but yes, there's a whole handful that they were there. And I mean, when I played Little League, I'm aging myself, but the movie Bad News Bears, you had opening day with all the teams and, some guys could play and some players could not play. I mean, it was part of the game. You had that experience. You got in there, and I'm going to blame it on us parents. Us
Yeah,
parents. On it.
yeah, yeah. It is.
We're always looking for that, how are we going to get our kid to that next level? And the thing with Jeff Frye and what we talk about is you have to have the basic capability of hitting. And if you can hit the ball really, really well and hit the ball consistently, then if you're lucky enough to get drafted and you're lucky enough to get to that next level, then, you can have a swing. Okay, Bellinger's, and let's go back to the Dodgers and Belly. Okay. You can swing your first 2 swings the way he was swinging all year long if you want. But then he chokes up and, all of a sudden is putting the ball in play per se, and he still hits a home run. And so trust that you're good enough to be able to do that. That's my take. And I think that's something that, I don't know, Jeff's not here to say he agrees or disagrees, but trust that you can hit home runs, and you also can, hit a ball in the gap the other way and move runners in, runner in scoring position. Let's put him in play. I mean, it drives me crazy watching big league games now when you see runners on second and third and nobody out, and we don't even put the ball in play. And, analytics says, hey, it's better if you strike out than you pop up. To me, I always was taught, like, if you put it in play and you hit it on the ground, there is a chance they might make an error. A strikeout's a strikeout. Yes, catcher could miss the ball, but overall, you're not making the defense do much. So there's things about it that are old school baseball. I mean, what wins World Series? Let's go back to that question. To win a World Series, you manufacture runs and you have decent pitching. So, it's not always just the long ball that wins the World Series. You have the guys that get the doubles, and you were talking about, I think the biggest piece of the Dodgers that we were hurting the most was when we lost. Oh my gosh, why did I go blank? I do this all the time with him. Our first baseman. Oh my gosh, why am I blank on his name?
Muncy.
Yeah. I went and watched the Dodgers play once this year with my son, and runners in scoring position, and he hits it in the gap. He gets 2 RBIs. Later in the game, he gets a home run. It's situational hitting. We really missed that in him. And that was a big piece of the Dodgers that was missing in the playoffs that we needed.
Well, so there was a Twitter thread earlier in the day, scouting _ MLB showed a video of Cliff Floyd, who was down at the BreakThrough Series.
Yeah, he was there.
Right? First round pick, 14th overall, 1991, MLB June amateur draft from Thornwood High School in South Holland, Illinois. And Michael Lehman replies to that, saying his high school coach his junior year would brag about cutting Cliff Floyd from his freshman year. And then Cliff Floyd replied that nobody believes that story, but thanks for confirming it. And nobody thought it was true, according to Michael Lehman, who, said that he didn't have such nice things to say about the coach. And then I asked if it was like the JV or freshman team or from varsity. And Michael J. Lehman. So we'll give him props there. He said the story was always the freshman team. He was trying to spin it into a Michael Jordan type story. He was also our varsity basketball coach. He was better suited for basketball, but still a clown. So, I mean, but here's the thing, right? A kid now that gets cut from the freshman baseball team, she's got nowhere else to even play. Like, they would have to pay their way into some travel team somewhere, and they have to find a situation where they just want the tuition and they have open spots. And even then, those travel teams tend to play the kids who are kind of the better kids, and they try to win games, and they're less interested in developing kids. So you potentially have like a Cliff Floyd who ends up, getting another shot. And, we all know how great of a player he was, and he got himself into being a first-round pick. So it's just how many others are there out there, right, that are similar these days? I don't know. The Diamond Dog is growling at Dawg, by the way. You could actually hear her.
See, I'm looking over her.
If you're just listening and you're like, what is that background noise?
Angry or hungry?
Anyway, so I think probably we put a bow on that whole thing, and we could probably just wrap it up there. Missy Coombes, as always, so generous with her time, and thanks for walking us through the Dodgers. We don't do probably quite enough of that. Not that we're completely Met and Yankee centric, but we do talk about the other teams. It's just that it somehow it always ends up going back to the Yankees, or probably even more Mets. I would say we talk more Mets than any other team. But we cover the Cardinals, the Brewers, Braves, Dodgers, Cubs, White Sox, whoever.
Milwaukee.
Yeah,
big thing about Milwaukee a lot.
Yeah. And by the way, shout out to Angels brass. The Mets they decided not to bring Ray Montgomery from the Angels to become the Mets GM. So Ray has responded by grabbing every good Met and Yankee that is available on the market. First Thor, Then Tyler Wade, he made a trade with the Yankees after Wade was designated for assignment. Well, I say he, but Perry Minasian, he's part of the staff. And then who was it today? There was another one today, right? It was
Loop.
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 Yeah,
Aaron Loop.
Aaron Loop, the lefty. So good job by our buddy Ray. The Diamond Dog is growling, which means Dog has to go take her out and or feed her.
She's sad that Dora's gone.
I know, and I can't blame her. But there's other days. Follow Missy Coombes at Missy MISSYCOOMBES on Twitter. She's a great follow. She tells it like it is, and she imparts knowledge. And you want to talk about the book thing real quick before we go, or should we just do that on a separate show? Talk about it a little bit.
Starting just the very beginning parts of writing a book. So more to come later. How about that? We'll do it another time when it's further along in the process.
But this way we know. So when it's a finished product, whenever, that we were in on it at the beginning. So it was glad.
Yes,
to see
and
that.
Tony Castro, thank you very much. He contacted me. We've been in talking, and I need to return a phone call to him actually, and there'll be more information coming out real soon. But writing a book on the history of women in baseball and the women of summer, and a little bit about my story as well, and all that fun stuff coming soon.
Very good. And in the meantime, you'll be telling some of those stories on our podcast as well, because we'd love to have you whenever you'll give us time, which I know you will do generously, as you have in the past.
I love being on your guys' show. So anytime, anytime.
Be careful.
I kind of like to talk baseball, just like you guys do.
Be careful. You'll be on a lot more than you expect. You'll be having co-host status soon. So follow Missy. Follow the dog at Jeff Healy 8. That's the number 8. You can follow me. I run the Diamond Diehards Twitter at Diamond Diehards, and all the social media. You can find us at Diamond Diehards or DiamondDiehards.com. Big Ed's Car Wash, Fair Lawn, New Jersey. Check them out if you're in the area in Bergen County or Passaic County. Big Ed, you got to check out his tunnel. I just saw Big Ed. We were over there the other day, and I was just talking to him earlier today, and he's dying to get on here and talk about his stuff as well. He takes care of us nicely, so go check out Big Ed's Car Wash, Fair Lawn, New Jersey. FMSgraphics.com for all your printing and promotional needs. FMSgraphics.com is a family-run, family-owned business for the last 50-something years, so check them out. All your printing and promotional needs at FMSgraphics.com. If you need a nice piece of art for your home, your office, or your home office, you need to go to SportsMaps, MAPZ.com, SportsMAPZ.com. A wonderful piece of art for the sports fan in yourself or for a gift for your home, your office, or your home office. SportsMaps.com, SportsMAPZ.com. That is going to do it for, we didn't call it a Monday Night Live, but we covered the Dodgers, the Breakthrough Series, and a lot of other cool stuff with the great and powerful Missy Coombes. For Missy and the dog, Jeff Healy, this is Joe Rizzo. Diamond Diehards is out.